Welcome, everybody, to the Under the Brim podcast, where I will undoubtedly call the podcast by the wrong name because for like the past 16 years, I've been doing a different podcast called the Coach Brew podcast, both of which are hosted by yours truly. But this is Under the Brim, where we talk about the hats that fascinating people wear in life, figuratively and literally. I thought it would only be appropriate to begin this new podcast with uh, uh, the man, the myth, the legend, a person who really was the originator of the idea for a podcast about hats for me and my hat business. Hatsbybru.com, by the way, is the sponsor of this podcast. But that person is none other than Mr. Dan Tudor. Dan and I have known each other professionally since I began speaking at one of his conferences that he runs. It's the National Collegiate Recruiting Conference. And that conference sort of travels about the country to different locations and is a professional development resources for coaches, recruiting coordinators, athletic administrators to get better at basically selling their college. Dan is one of one. And it is very safe for me to say there's no one who does what Dan does. Certainly no one who does what Dan does the way he does it. And he's just one of the more fascinating people that I know and consider a friend and colleague. And I think you're going to find him really interesting as well. He's got a heck of a background, much like me, has done a bunch of different stuff. He's worn a bunch of different professional hats in his adult life. And welcome to, well, this is kind of your podcast too, Dan.
I'm just going to sit here and listen to more. You're doing great. Just keep doing it.
Should I just be your hype guy and I'm
going to sit back and just wait. This is the first 2 minutes of your podcast have been absolutely 5-star, thoroughly enjoyable. I would recommend it to anybody.
Riveting, I think is the word.
Yes. Yeah, riveting.
So speaking of riveting, who is Dan Tudor?
Who is Dan Tudor? I'm just a humble man trying to work his way through life. Father, husband, Christian, business owner, tennis player, fun guy, collaborator on podcast names with people who rhyme with crew, and that's the short list. So,
tennis or pickleball? Is it really tennis that you play?
I have taken one pickleball lesson.
It seems like the whole world's playing pickleball now.
I know, and it is somewhat sad because it's it's a little bit like you used to go to the movies and the theater and it was a big event, and now you just click the Netflix app and scroll for an hour and don't watch anything, and then you go back to some TV show you watched 20 years ago. That's the difference between tennis and pickleball. So I am a tennis player. In terms of ranking or rating, it's a 3.5 to a 4.0 on a scale of 1 to 8. That's how the USTA ranks players. So right in the meaty middle, like most men my age. Very serious. Yeah.
I didn't know you were that serious about it. It's kind of like a golf handicap. I didn't know there was like a tennis rating like that.
There's absolutely a tennis rating. Yes.
Things you learn about
the things you learn, not only about hats, but now about tennis too.
So my neighbor had, we have a new neighbor down the street who just built, and they put a pool in their backyard. Like, it was very obvious they were digging up the yard to put a pool in. But then, like, on the other side of the pool fence, they have like this kind of gravel rectangular area. And everyone's wondering, what are they going to put there? What's that going to be? And a bunch of my neighbors and I had a bet. And I said, it's going to be a pickleball court. And they're like, no way. No one's putting a pickleball court on their property. And like, it's finally the season of year in Maine where you can actually start to like pour concrete and like do things outside on your grounds.
Right.
It's a freaking pickleball court.
Yeah.
Now, I should
Yeah.
have bet them money. It was just a gentleman's bet. But yeah, so my neighbor has a pickleball court.
I've taken one pickleball lesson. The guys I play tennis with play pickleball, and
Yeah,
eventually I will play pickleball. But while I can play tennis at the level that I'm at, I'm going to play tennis.
peer pressure, man.
It's
Eventually
harder. I like doing the harder things, the
there's a
things
lot
that
to be
hurt,
said for
that hurt a
that.
little bit. Yeah.
So you are relatively new to the East Coast. Where did you grow up? And talk to us about young Dan.
Young Dan. I grew up in Shafter, California, which is outside of Bakersfield, California,
That's Northern California.
which is Central California, about 2 hours north of Los Angeles,
Okay.
in the Central Valley. Which people think of California, they think of palm trees and the ocean and Hollywood, and this is 2 hours north is basically Texas. It's flat, agriculture, oil. So that's where I grew up. And Shafter.
Is it the Valley? Like when I think of like, isn't there a the Valley in California?
That would be, that's what Valley people refer to it, as the Valley.
Okay.
Not to be confused with 1980s phenomenon of Valley Girls,
No.
which was the San Fernando Valley, which is near Los Angeles, 2 hours away from
That's what I was
Shafter.
wondering. Yep.
Yeah. So, fourth generation in that town. And in the high school first graduating class, picture my grandmother, and in the mid 50s were both my parents and various aunts and uncles. The 1980s were me, and then in the 2014ish or 13ish was my oldest daughter, and then we moved in 2015 to North Carolina.
Gotcha. How so it's like real small town America you grew up in.
Yeah, it used to be small town, and then it grew and became less of a, just not what we wanted in terms
Yeah.
of amount of traffic, and so we moved.
So how did that affect who you became as a kid? You know, like your parents went to the same school you did, like just growing up in a tiny community where everybody knows everybody, like your teachers probably knew your parents,
Mhm.
you know, you might have had some of the same teachers. Like how does that kind of affect who you became as a Ute?
I think anybody who grew up in a small town in the late 70s, early to mid 80s probably had the same experience, which is you ran around town or biked around town, and people knew who you were, and you went to the arcade, and then you rode somewhere, and you didn't show up back at the house until it was dark at 8 o'clock, and you were safe, and life was good, and you just had the world at your feet, and so it was a fantastic place to grow up.
Yeah, we've reached that age where like we're big on the nostalgia of all that, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and one of the unique things in our town was that from kindergarten on, you went to school with basically the same core set of kids, and that was special too. So, and we're still all pretty close to this day. We can pick up right where we left off, and yeah, so it was great.
Now, is your town did you have like one second grade class, or were there two sections of second grade?
There were like two or three of
Kind of
each
how I define how
class.
small a community is.
Yeah, I would probably, two or three of each class in grades in school.
So, knowing what I know about you, you've done some pretty fascinating big things um, professionally as an adult. And I'm just wondering, like, a lot of times, small town America, you're not exposed to big things. Like your thinking is sort of oftentimes limited to within your zip code, so to speak. Talk to us a little bit about like kind of your first professional pursuits and the genesis of that, growing
Yeah.
up where you did?
But the first hat that I wore, John, to keep it on
You
brand,
said you did that.
the
We're
Under the
talking about
Brim,
professional hats you wear.
right? Under the Brim podcast. I want to keep it on brand. So, um, my first real job out of college, actually, while I was still in college, was as a TV sportscaster for an ABC station in Bakersfield, California. Started interning, worked my way up, lucked out. 2 months before I graduated from college, had a full-time on-air job, which was horrible pay and horrible hours, but I didn't care because I was 22 years old and out of college, and I was talking about sports on TV. And it was a great time to be a sportscaster because it was before ESPN was widely, viewed, every single minute of every day if you're a sports fan. So
You
people
kind
had
of were
to,
Sports Center before Sports Center for your part of the state.
yeah. And so everybody, kids, parents, everybody watched local news and local sports because we covered local sports. And so it was a big deal. And in that town, uh, if you were one of the 6 sports reporters in the town for the 3 networks, you were a big deal, which wasn't important to me. In fact, it was sort of uncomfortable for me when I got married a couple of years after college. It was at a level where we couldn't go out like to the mall because there's the
Wow.
TV guy. And
Yep.
now I think a local TV person could go to the mall and nobody would recognize them.
Yep.
And they're fine. But back then it was different. And so it was a unique time to be a sports reporter, and it led me to lots of interesting people. So I hung out for a day riding around in a limo in LA with George Foreman, the boxer, as he was beginning his comeback. Knew and interviewed guys like Michael Jordan and Mike Piazza and Oral Hershiser and David Robinson from the San Antonio Spurs, lots of the LA Dodgers because we covered Dodger games.
That was
Eric
their
Dickerson of
heyday.
the Rams.
That was their heyday as a franchise, right?
Yeah. So Rams, Raiders, Dodgers, and So it was a very unique time, very unique job. I tell people it was a great job, a great hat to have worn.
And I think often hats have a shelf life.
No
matter how well you maintain and care for them. What led you to transition out of being a on-air talent with the local television network and into something else?
I got tired of staying up until midnight every night, and I got tired of not making any money. Those were the 2 driving motivators.
Which is like people think like TV people must be famous and make tons of money. It's actually not the case when you work in media very often.
Right. Most don't. And the solution to that is you move around the country and get bigger jobs and more pay. The problem was I was from, and so everybody that I worked with was trying to get back to where they were from.
Yeah.
They were in Bakersfield just for a stop. And so I was already from the area. I didn't want to move. And so and plus I was a hard worker, worked more hours than I should have because I cared about the on-air product. And the person, another person at the station might have just worked the bare minimum, and there was no difference in the pay. There's no hey, Dan, great job, extra hours, here's some extra pay. No. And so that sort of taught me like, okay, I need to be in something where I feel like I have some control over what I make.
And that led you where?
That led me into sales, which is a great, everybody should learn how to sell. It's a great training ground. And I got trained with a Fortune 100 company, very thorough sales process, which I discovered I was pretty good at. And I enjoyed it because it was a competition. It was a little bit of a, it was, it was just fun and financially rewarding. And that led me into some management and training roles with the company. And then that got me into forming my own businesses related around recruiting and sports and coaching, because I love sports and have been in previous years a coach at the high school level for football. So it just it was just a good fit.
And it's interesting kind of what drives us into self-employment, entrepreneurship, and your transition from sales and kind of learning process with a well-established, very successful company to just launching out on your own. What did that look like? And like, how did you, first of all, it's a big step to take that plunge, the security of being an indoor cat, so to speak, and getting a bi-weekly paycheck and insurance and everything, to becoming an outdoor cat, as I like to call us,
Right.
and being an entrepreneur and having it all be on you. What was the tipping point where you knew, like, okay, it's time, I'm ready to do this, I want to do this? Or you thought you're ready? I don't think any of us are ever truly ready. It's like becoming a head coach for the first time. You
Yeah.
think you're ready, but no one's ever truly fully prepared.
Or starting a hat business and a hat podcast.
Exactly.
There's no class in college you can take for that. So my favorite quote, my favorite professional business quote, is from Robert Jarvik, the inventor of the artificial heart. And the quote is, "Leaders are visionaries who have a poorly developed sense of fear and no concept of the odds against them." And that is me. So purely by accident, was found a degree of success, and through hard work and bumping into walls and making a turn and going a different direction and figuring it out, that's how I've done it. And many other people have done it better and more smoothly. Many other people have failed faster and more dramatically than fortunately I have. So what led me to that is, I think it was just, I like being in control of as much of my future and determining my own path as much as possible.
Sure.
And that sort of fit the bill, as they would say in the hat biz.
Exactly. I like that you're really immersing yourself into this, and I think you should have like a little scoreboard ticker of how many different hat figures of speech you use.
Yeah.
And that'll be the gold standard for everyone else who comes on. Like, can they?
There you go, making hat references, right, and not putting a cap on how many references you make. Yeah. So, do I get to show you all the different hats that I have? Because I was really thinking about this. Okay, is that later?
Well, you can put one on now, because I do want to ask you. Now, you sort of started when you went out on your own, a recruiting service, if I'm not mistaken. That has morphed into the Selling for Coaches program at Tudor Collegiate Strategies, where you help train and mentor coaches on how to become better recruiters. So let's put that major hat on, so to speak, and tell us a little bit about that professional hat you now wear in life.
I run a company, have for 20 years, that works with college coaches and athletic departments.
This is the part where you're supposed to put your hat on, Dan.
Oh, well, do I have to have a hat for that, though?
Yeah, you said you had a bunch of hats.
Okay, yeah.
I just figured you could throw one on your head.
Oh, well,
like, these are segues.
But no, here's the thing. No, but here's the thing, is that as I was thinking about,
I thought I had the TV guy on my podcast.
Look, you sit back and shut up for a second. I'm taking over this. But so, I know this is technically your podcast, but just hang on a second. So I was thinking about, I'm going to be on with Coach Bru, the great John Brubaker. He's starting this huge thing, and it's going to be big. This is what you were meant for. This is what you were meant for. So I'm thinking, in a way, hats, there are so many different hats that we wear, which you've been talking about, but literally there's different hats. And as I was looking at all the hats I have, they're for different things, different moments, different moods. So if I'm playing tennis, I will usually choose the white hat or the black hat. Am I the good guy or the bad guy in that match?
Wow. Okay.
Sometimes if I decide I'm gonna be the good guy, but if I'm not playing well, I put this one on because psychologically, like, nope, gotta be a little bit of, a little bit hard. Who I am a Houston Astros fan, have been since the early 70s. So they're not 2024 is not starting well for them. Hopefully they turn it around. But I was an Astros fan before they were good, way before they were good. Most of 25, 30 years of my life.
You were beating the Astros drum well before they were successful.
Right. Correct.
See what they did there? Yeah.
So to speak. Yes.
He's got his Astros.
An oldie but a goodie. Yeah. So that, pride, and I've been to a couple of I was at the last World Series they won, game 7, or game 6, I was there.
I remember you invited me, but then you changed your mind, decided to take your son.
Right, that was another game, but that's a story for another podcast. So I got that. I also have, I found this one, and I actually have worn it outside. It's like, this would go good in Maine. It's like a beanie, but it does have a bill to it. So if I need to be outside, cold weather, it gets cold in North Carolina, good. That. I also have the more extreme, which I have played tennis in, but again, like if it's in the 20s, 30s, I've got the full on, I put it on wrong. I got the full on, camo, that.
I think that's called a balaclava. I don't know if that's necessarily a hat, Dan.
But it's something that
I like how.
Okay, so interesting question. Interesting question is, if you put something on your head, isn't that a hat?
This is kind of like, is a hot dog a sandwich?
Or if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there, does it make a sound? Yeah. Just think about that, because you need to define that for your audience. I would say, yes, anything that you put on your head is technically a hat. One of my favorite hats is my Chaka hat from Land of the Lost.
Wow.
Got the Chaka hat.
Vintage.
And my classiest hat is one I bought just actually last winter for a Christmas party, which is a legitimate top hat.
That's beautiful. Can we dive into the top hat thing?
Absolutely.
I want to come back to that.
Sure.
Because that is beautiful. So the major hat that you wear professionally now is, just tell everyone exactly what you do.
We help college coaches communicate more effectively and sell their programs more effectively because they've never been trained how to do it. And we train them how to do it. We help them with their messaging. And that has been turned out to be a huge part of my life's work, which I love. A lot of great relationships, a lot of fun stories, and a lot of just, inside the coaching world and college athletic world, you get to know a lot of great people. And most college coaches are great people with great hearts, and they want to do the right thing. So it's great. I love working with them.
And remember during the introduction, I referred to Dan as one of one. There really is no one else who does what he does. Certainly not. I mean, he might say there is, but certainly not the way he does it. And I just think there's a valuable lesson for everyone in this. You saw a need in the market and you filled it. And, I would describe you as someone who is an incredible listener. And I don't just mean that in like the traditional sense where if we're sitting down having a glass of iced tea together, where like you're just listening to me. What I mean is like you listen to the market, you listen to your audience, you listen to customers, and you were doing that. And that's sort of how Tudor Collegiate Strategies was born of listening, was it not? Like, give us a little bit of
absolutely. Yeah. So no matter what business or profession or lifestyle someone is in, if you don't know how to do something or you don't know exactly how to go about something, if you listen to what your customers or your coworkers or whatever setting you're in ask or talk about or wonder about or ask if can you do that, that's a sign that you should do that because that's a need and you want to fill a need. And so you're right, that's many times what I did was not because I'm a brilliant person, but I listen and I try to get ideas and then put them into action, put a system behind them to actually make them work out for people.
So,
excuse me.
when you say system, I have a belief that I believe it was Deming's management consultant, W. Deming's, who said, if you can't describe what you're doing as a system, you don't know what you're doing. And more often than not, that is accurate, no matter what industry, no matter what business or profession or activity you apply it to. How have you helped your clients, your customers, systematize what they do? They still need to have like their own unique flair and spin to it, but talk to us a little bit about that systematization, and teaching them kind of like what's tried and true.
Yeah. Well, externally for our customers, it's really just about getting on a schedule and understanding what that schedule should be based on listening to and on the advice of your customers, which in their case are prospects, prospective athletes and students going into college. So we teach them how to do that and we help them do that. And then internally in the business, it's creating internal systems that help everything operate so that we can perform the external systems. And the more that you have, the better usually that it goes. And that's one huge thing that I've learned doing what I do.
So, since you have your thinking hat on,
Mm-hmm.
what's been the most difficult part of your entrepreneurial journey? Because you're right, you had mentioned before, like it's not something you study in school, you can't major in it. It's something like you're kind of building the airplane while it's taking off, while it's going down the runway trying to take off.
Yeah, and so any entrepreneur is somewhat alone in that effort. And I wouldn't say that's difficult because I kind of intentionally chose that, but it's different when all the pressure is on you to create, make sure the systems get created and so on. Whereas if you're excuse me, fighting a little bit of a remnants of a cold. If you're a part of a large company, large organization, you're one of 8 people that make a decision, you can kind of sneak and slither out of it by saying, well, I'll let everybody else decide, or 8 people decided what we should do. It wasn't just me. So if it goes wrong, you have an out. And when you're an entrepreneur, you don't have an out. And you have to, if things don't work, then guess what? That's my fault. If it does work, oh, great. Then that was a good decision by me. Every entrepreneur, every business owner, anybody who runs something, whether it's a baseball team or a business, they're going to make some wrong decisions. They're going to make some right decisions. And, we all don't like, I think, people who, we see out in the world, whether it's politics or business or sports, an athlete that makes excuses, defers responsibility, covers up for incompetence, like whatever it is, we don't like that. And so you try not to, act like that. But that's the most difficult part, is that you're on your own, which I think any entrepreneur would say, yeah, that's the challenge.
Sure. I think with every great challenge, there's also great rewards.
Mm-hmm.
And the rewards of business ownership are tremendous. Might not always feel that way, especially around April 15th every year. But what has been the most rewarding part of your journey professionally?
Yeah. When I'm home, there is some travel involved with what I do. But when I'm at home, I have, for all 3 kids, which have spanned now 28 years, so I have about 30 years in on raising kids once it's all done. I have driven them to school and pick them up from school, which I think is a huge fringe benefit for a dad, being able to do that. Working out of the house, which I have a home office in this current role in business, and so seeing my wife every day. Hey, let's go grab lunch. We can do that. We've spent way more time together as a couple than most couples have. They're sort of fighting towards retirement so they can finally spend time together and do things.
Sure.
And it was definitely work involved with with any entrepreneurial effort, but there's also, you get to decide when you have free time. So that's been a huge reward.
What you're in such a to me at least, such an interesting space, because I know so much of your backstory, and as you're sharing with everyone, they're starting to see this as well. You are one of one. What's been the most unique part of this whole experience? And the reason I ask that, and the reason I say unique, is, for many entrepreneurs, like let's say somebody decides, I want to own my own real estate agency. Well, there have been plenty of realtors, broker owners, like plenty of people who have done that already and done that in that same market or that same community. There's nothing terribly unique about their path. There are, certain small things along the way, of course, yeah, but you literally have blazed a trail, and I'm going to say this humorously, you have gone where no man has gone before.
Mm-hmm.
But I do mean that seriously. What you've done
Oh,
is you literally had to blaze the trail to do this and convince people that there is viable, there's proof of concept, and convince inherently skeptical people.
well, I would push back a little bit. Every show needs some controversy, right?
Sure.
So you're wrong, Brubaker.
I
You're
feel
wrong.
like Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless now.
Okay.
Okay, this is good.
So I would say that anybody who opens a real estate agency, true, there are lots of real estate agencies, but that one is unique because now, in fact, in that field, you're swamped with competition. There's more real estate agents than there are homes and buyers and sellers to manage. So that is a dog eat dog world. And if you survive and thrive and succeed in that, then you are you're you're the real deal. Restaurant owners, I know a couple of restaurant owners. That is a tough, low margin business that if you can carve out momentum and you actually have a restaurant that you have to expand it and grow it, man, that's good for you. I mean, that's really admirable because it's a competitive world. I mean, and I'm in a certain niche that maybe wasn't being served. Oops, really apologize for that. But if we're basically a marketing and consulting agency, and there's lots of those around, and each one has to find their audience and the people they serve. So I like our audience the best. But anybody who opens a business, whether that's small on the side, you're making $5,000 a year selling stuff on Etsy, man, good for you.
They have to find a way to make their business unique within a pre-existing industry.
Mm-hmm.
You've kind of created an industry unto itself, or a niche unto itself, and I'm just wondering, like, what you found extremely unique and remarkable about blazing that path. But I do agree with you. What you're saying is, like, if you're a realtor, you need to make what you're doing unique, but like they're all traveling down the same lane. If you're in the restaurant industry, you're all traveling down the same lane, but you have to find a way to make what you do unique. You're completely unique in that it's the lane is unique and how you do what you do.
Right. So wearing this to the Christmas party that I went to.
It's a beautiful top hat. For those of you just listening, not watching on BruTube, he's wearing a beautiful top hat.
Right. Yeah, Abraham Lincoln-esque top hat. So I could, I had to treat it differently than I would a cap that I'd, slap on my head and go driving, in the car. This does not fit inside the car. So you have to, it's a little top heavy and wobbly, so you can't, get too animated like you would be able to in a baseball cap. So you have to figure that out on the fly. And because I never owned a top hat before, same thing involved in, whenever you do something unique, like you're sitting in front of an American flag that's either has a coffee stain on it or that's a knot because of wood. It's made out of wood.
It's a
So,
knot. Yep.
so there's a person that decided, I'm not, there are cloth flags everywhere. I'm going to make a wooden flag. And, so that's a unique spin on that. Well, he had to figure out who's going to buy it, where am I going to sell it? Like everybody goes through a little bit of a process like that. And so I had to as well. And I think it's just a matter of like, you have to start somewhere. So go with your instinct. The phrase that I encourage my employees to live by and that I live by is ready, fire, aim instead of ready, aim, fire. So some people spend all their time trying to get the perfect plan together. Man, just start. Bump, if you're bowling and you're, not good, they put the little bumpers up. Roll the ball down, let it sort of boom, 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 and you'll get it, and it'll eventually get straighter and straighter. And so I think that's just what I did. I didn't have a choice; I had to do it. But even that process is sort of fun because you're waking up every day saying, "Yeah, what? So how's it going to get done today?" And that was the fun of starting it.
So obviously trial and error is huge, and being willing to adapt and improvise as the market dictates. Um, and you develop a set of best practices, as you're traveling down that path. And then your industry, everyone's industry typically has a set of best practices. So what I want you to do right now is if you could remove your top hat, Dan,
Okay.
and I'd like you to put on your contrarian hat, whatever that might be. The question for you as you're in your thinking hat, your contrarian hat, is what's one thing experts in your field believe that you disagree with?
So do I need to put another hat on right now? Is what you're saying?
No.
Oh,
Like
okay.
I was speaking
Metaphysically.
Metaphorically,
Okay.
yes.
So I would say entrepreneurially, a lot of people think I can't do what I want to do because I need a ton of money.
Yep.
I need investors or I need a bank. I need to go to a bank and get a loan. And you don't. So, and it's better if you don't to start a business. So I didn't. Anybody listening shouldn't. You start small and you build it up and you expand and expand and expand and you grow it that way. So be patient. And I think that there is so much in our society of you need it now, you can get it fast. We're on social media and all the different people just say, I can get your, views and, clicks up by, this 4-step system. Maybe, I doubt it, but maybe you could. And really the best thing I found is that you build an audience, you treat them well with respect, give them good value, and they'll want to have a relationship with you, whether that's, again, if you weren't in a business, they will want to hire you or be around you or bring you into leadership, or they'll buy whatever it is that you're selling, a product or service.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying like don't look for shortcuts. Don't waste money on what people are saying is, quote, the easy way or the air quotes kind of hack, or here's how we can fast track this for you, because there really isn't a fast track. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think there can be fast tracks. I mean, there are lots of businesses that start fast. Sometimes they also go down fast too.
Yeah.
And there used to be a business called pets.com who rose, during the internet boom dramatically, ads on the Super Bowl, and then a year later they were out of business when the economy tanked. So you can go up fast, but the goal I've always felt is if you're going to run a business, then make it something that will last. And to do that, you usually have to do that more slowly and more methodically, and make sure you're taking care of customers. And that's just the philosophy that I go by,
Sure.
that I found successful.
And you absolutely did. Now we're going to shift gears a little bit, and I want you to put on a very different hat.
Okay. Well, I'm going to get my
Oh boy.
I'm going to get my Chaka hat, because that's a very different hat.
So I'm going to ask you to put on your tinfoil hat, so to speak.
Oh, I should.
And
you know what? I should have grabbed some aluminum foil, some tinfoil. That's great.
Tinfoil hat. Some people don't know what that means. Tinfoil hat. It's really kind of a figure of speech, like not necessarily a conspiracy theory, but like tinfoil.
Yeah, I think it is actually sort of conspiracy theory.
All right, so like,
sure.
I'm not really asking like, tell me if you think the Earth is flat or the moon landing was faked or anything like that. When it comes to like tinfoil hat conspiracy theory, what I'm really asking is, what's your spiciest opinion that most people would disagree with?
Wow. Spicy opinion that most people would disagree with is, oh, wow, that's a good question. I don't, like, my opinions are, it's funny because in a way they aren't spicy, in another way they are, because they're more like down the middle of the road.
Well, pragmatic might be the new spicy in 2020.
Pragmatic is the new spicy,
because
it's, I've found that things that aren't, whatever is an opinion or a trend or a product or whatever that is, this is the sexy new thing that everybody should do, needs to do, is doing. I go to the gym, and on the TVs, of course, are all the morning shows, and so I see the stuff on Good Morning America or the Today Show, and I just sort of roll my eyes, because it's just, it's going to be gone in a week.
Yeah,
and
it's all hot takes.
It's all hot takes, and so I'm more of the, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna gather some information, observe, and then I'll make a judgment. So that's why I say, like, in a way, that's the least spicy of all, and yet in our society now, it's actually a very unique thing to do or to not do, depending on what it is.
It is, because and I love the fact that you originally come from the media, and you gave the media and a morning show as an example, because we're in the area of it's more important to be first than it is to be correct.
Mm-hmm.
And taking that sort of slow, methodical, pragmatic approach really is actually very contrarian and spicy at this point.
Yeah.
Of like clicks and page views and who can go viral. So I love that. And I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good question.
So we've all had very influential people in our lives. Who is someone in your life who wore the mentor hat and influenced you the most in your career?
Wow. So I have some people that what I would describe as and I would encourage everybody to have this, actually, but what I sort of think of as my personal Mount Rushmore. Like, who are the people that I could look back on and had an influence, or that I think were grounded and
so it's me, and who are the other two people, basically?
Yeah, well, you as young brew, but also middle-aged brew, and now seasoned brew. So there's three of you on the mountain. Sort of a three-facing special thing we've carved out. I mean, in addition to you, would be a bunch of people that nobody would know, names you wouldn't know, and that is. So I would say this. It's another great question. I would say that if your personal Mount Rushmore are people who are on the Today Show, or a politician or a celebrity or an influencer, for God's sake, I think you might be looking to the wrong people to have on your personal Mount Rushmore, because in reality, it should be your personal relationships. I've known a lot of great men in my life and many great women, but I'm thinking of more, the men in my life. And again, a woman listening to this would have women that maybe she was influenced by.
I mean, I
More.
did say mentor.
We will go with that. So several people that just were like rock solid. There's a little Mount Rushmore, humor there. Rock solid people, start to finish, weren't perfect, but consistent, role model.
Only allowed to have one. Mount Rushmore has 3. Who is the number one? Most influence on you.
Who is the number one? Oh, wow. I don't. Boy, that's a tough question. And you could tell if you're watching this that these were not pre-rehearsed questions. I didn't know what this whole thing was going to be. Actually,
I still don't either.
You're still trying to figure it out too.
Yeah.
Probably. Gosh, I mean, influence-wise, I mean, how could you not say your father? For some people, that's a good or a bad thing. For me, it was a good thing.
Okay.
You have people that are in business, people that I knew, at church, people in a community. Coaches.
I love that you're giving me a non-answer as your answer.
I don't have, like, this an honest answer is I've never thought of this one person is, other than the guy in the Bible that I've met, not one person that I would say, that's the big influence. It's been a potpourri, so to speak.
So I've been asking you some deep questions that you've, been ruminating over, and we're now going to shift gears and just ask you some fun, lighthearted, kind of speed round, sort of casual questions. Favorite hat?
Okay, but hold on a second. So, do I get to ask you some questions?
You do at some point, not just yet, but favorite hat.
Okay.
Favorite hat.
All right. Different hat.
Favorite hat. I'm asking you what your favorite hat is.
My favorite literal hat.
Literal, yes.
The one I wear the most.
Get rid of all of them. You can only keep one. What is it?
Probably one of the tennis hats, because I play a lot of tennis.
What hat do you take with you on vacation?
The Chaka hat.
Okay.
I also have a Goo Goo, like the little candies from Nashville, from Tennessee, Goo Goo bar, I think it is. So I have that. I have a Goo Goo hat.
Okay.
Well, you're from Maine, so
yeah.
Do you actually?
You ever wear a hat to work?
Rarely.
Are you?
I mean, so John. I mean, you see this head, right?
It's beautiful.
This is not necessarily a hat-friendly head. Like, it's hard to find a hat that
you worked in TV, but you have a head for radio. Yes.
And a voice for newspaper, and yeah.
So, this is a hill I'm absolutely willing to die on. What I'm about to ask you.
Okay.
Are you pro or anti ball cap on backwards?
Oh, I think at the right time. At the right time. I
believe hats should always be worn in the direction that your life is headed. I am very anti ball cap on backwards.
Well, but what if I choose to head through life without anything shading my eyes and obstructing my view? Oh, I think we may have turned the tables there, don't you think?
Maybe a little, yeah.
Maybe a little bit.
Are you
maybe a
ball
little
cap
bit.
on? You're ball cap on backwards guy, aren't you?
No, I am mostly ball cap on frontwards. But again, like if I do this,
Yeah.
there's a serious. There's like a. First of all, I like this little thing too. It's like a little window
Into your soul.
and into my soul. But you got. So I think the bill in the back actually sort of sends a signal like it's more. I'm more aerodynamic now. I've got the whooshing effect.
You're diving in head first. Yep.
And it's like, all right, this is more like let's play ball. This is like, okay, now we're on. So
what was the arm wrestling movie Sylvester Stallone was in when he was a truck driver? He did that arm wrestling competition, and right before he got up to compete, he would spin the hat backwards.
Yeah, so that's the same thing.
Yeah,
that's the same thing.
So I mean, that movie. Do you remember that?
I don't know. The Bicep Boys, or
I'll look it up while you're talking.
That's good.
So Dan, hats are a reflection of our personality. What does your hat say about you? I'm going to ask you. To talk about the top hat.
The top hat.
Yeah.
I'm going to put the top hat on. All right. So
what's that
I would say that I'm willing to not take myself too seriously, because nobody, I haven't met actually another person who has ever worn a top hat. I think that like if you're going to go to a Christmas party, which is why I bought this along with a white jacket and a red bow tie. If you're going to go to a Christmas party, don't just show up in something you would wear every day. Have fun with it, be exceptional, and so stand out.
Did you wear tux with tails?
No, it's like a white, almost like looks like a white dinner jacket type of thing. And I got it.
Did anyone mistake you for the valet when you were outside?
No.
Did anyone mistake you for the wait staff while you're inside?
No.
Okay, good.
So it worked. It worked well. Now, good point that if I had not had the top hat, I may have been confused for either the valet or the wait staff, because it would have just been in black pants and a white jacket. But as a side note, because one person I also love is Jerry Seinfeld, I got this, for any Seinfeld fans that are watching, through the J. Peterman catalog. If you remember, J. Peterman from the Seinfeld show, it's a real person. He's got a real catalog.
Yeah.
So I saw this and I ordered the whole thing from the J. Peterman catalog, and so that's the other inside thing that I like. The fact that,
can I add something to that?
You can add anything. It's your show.
If you're a fan of advertising, copywriting, you just appreciate good writing, fun, playful, creative content, subscribe to the J. Peterman catalog and read the product descriptions.
Yeah, you can go to the internet site. Go to the internet site, jpeterman.com.
They're incredibly compelling. So I just want to share that. I love reading the J. Peterman product descriptions, just kind of as a writing nerd. By the way, Dan, the arm wrestling movie with Sylvester Stallone where he spins the hat around is called Over the Top.
Over the Top.
1987. He was a long-haul truck driver who tries to win back his alienated son while becoming a champion arm wrestler.
Which one of us haven't done that, though?
We've all been there, right?
Yeah. I really should have a Seinfeld hat, though, because that, I have a Seinfeld license plate. I have here in my office
a little dog after a Seinfeld character at one point in your life.
Yes, I had a lab named Watley after Dr. Tim Watley on the show. This is my miniature coffee table book about coffee tables. It has the little legs on it.
Oh boy!
I have a look at this. I have a soup can signed by the Soup Nazi.
The way I am about hats is like how you are about Seinfeld. It's just beautiful.
Yeah.
So, before this goes completely off the rails, as it usually does when we get together, I want to ask you, And this is an imaginary question that you could take anywhere.
Okay.
If you could wear a magic hat that gave you
Magic
the attention of the whole world for 1 minute, what would you say?
what would I say? I would say don't take yourself too seriously. It's all going to be all right. Um, none of us are getting out of this alive. So, prepare for that in whatever way you deem fit. And don't be afraid. I think we are governed too much by fear internally, not outside government, maybe a little bit, but
Yeah, probably both.
but yeah, probably both. Now let me get into that. But a lot of people are scared of doing things. Like right now, people are watching this. There's something that they're thinking about doing, and they're thinking, I can't do that. Oh, I shouldn't do that. Well, what if this? Well, you know what? You got one life. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. We've all been broke before. It's don't be afraid of being broke again. Famous saying is, they make more money every day. Literally, they're making more money every day.
Oh, we've
So,
printed more in the last 4 years than we had
yeah,
in the entire
right.
United States history.
So they, don't just like we're so cautious. And I just feel like, if somebody just says, I'm good, I don't want to, here's what governs me, John, is that
This
whenever I'm
is
about
longer than a minute in your magic hat, but because you're special, I'm making an exception.
this is going to be so poignant, it may bring you to tears. But, if, think about you on your deathbed, you might be in a top hat, you might not be. Are you going to look back? What would you look back on and say, I wish I would have done that? If you know something there is like, I don't want to have any regrets. I don't want to say, I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have seen that, tried that. Don't have any of those regrets. Do them. Fail or succeed, doesn't matter. It's a life experience.
I love that you just shared that. And I think I've already shared this with you. Some of the people listening might be readers of mine and have heard this. I don't know. But over the last, it's probably 19 months now, over the last 18 months, I had 7 of my former high school and college teammates, quote, die suddenly. Passed away, massive heart attack. One died practically at midnight on New Year's Eve. And they're all seemingly in perfectly good health. And
I'm taking my hat off for this segment.
Yeah.
In respect.
So, I share that because that was such a eye-opening experience for me that like I don't want to have any regrets. I want to spend my time doing things I want to do with people I enjoy doing that with. Personally, professionally, friends, family. Like it was a great recalibration and reprioritization of damn near everything in my life. And so I'm so glad that you said that about like choosing to do things where you're living without regret, and just finding a way.
Yeah. And real quick, 30-second story. The reason I went into business for myself, left the big company, was I was driving back from some, I don't know, useless dumb marketing meeting or something we were having as a company, driving back. Long story short, got in a car accident on a freeway, and I was fine, thankfully, miraculously fine. People in the car were fine, but it destroyed the car. And I was standing there, I was thinking, oh my gosh, I just almost probably could have died, should have died, working for some company I don't like, coming from a meeting I don't care about. What? I'm not going to do this anymore. And that was the moment I decided I'm out on my own.
It's interesting how some of those situations bring great clarity. It really is.
Yeah.
We started towards the beginning of this podcast. You held up 2 hats, a white hat and a black hat.
Yes.
So this is kind of where we're going to wind that podcast down. There's an old saying that good guys wear white hats. So Dan, if you've got the good guy white hat on,
Mhm.
you could change anything in the world that you want. What's the one thing you'd change and why?
Uh, if I could change anything in the world, I would. That brother, that's. Uh, I would. I would probably make everybody an entrepreneur if I could, if I had that power, because I think it would get people's hearts beating a little faster, and they would have to figure out what's really right for them. And accidentally or begrudgingly, they would end up living a better, more fulfilled life. Not to say that if you aren't an
Hopefully
entrepreneur,
they'd learn self-sufficiency too and
yeah,
accountability.
and yeah. So not to say that if you're working in a company as a secretary or an assistant to something, that's not perfect, because there are roles for that and needs for that. But if for somebody on the fence, man, just you need to do it. Now, you need a segment on the show that the last 3 minutes are where the guest, that would be me, gets to ask the host something. Do a lightning round for the host.
This is next on it's next on the agenda, Dan.
All right. So
we're on the same wavelength here.
Yeah.
So, I was going to ask you, what did I forget to ask you that you wanted me to ask? And what would you like to ask me?
Okay, so I'm going to ask you several questions, lightning round. You got to answer as fast as possible. Okay. So the hat you're wearing, I don't have a cowboy hat. If I wanted a cowboy hat like that, from the hat company By Bru, how much is that hat?
This hat would be $3.99.
$3.99, and I can just, I don't need to be there, because I'm not in Maine.
Not need to be here. This is a rabbit and beaver felt blend hat. We can do virtual fittings via Zoom. I can mail you a sizing kit so you get your head shape and your hat size, head measurement.
And are they made in China or Vietnam?
Neither. They are made right here in #America.
Wow. Okay.
That's #America.
Okay. And if I wanted to choose a different style, because that one kind of makes you look like the Flying Nun, do I get there's some style options on the website?
Absolutely. So fun fact, all hats come with an open crown, which means the top would be completely unshaped. It's just round.
Yeah.
And the brim would be completely flat.
Okay.
We could cut the brim down to any size, and we
sort of like the guy that led Curious George around, whatever his name was. He had one of those
man with the yellow hat. Yes.
Yeah.
He's actually going to be my second guest. You're my first guest. He's going to be my second.
I beat him. Wow. Okay. That's nice.
Yeah. So we can shape the crown, top of the hat, however you like. We can cut down and shape the brim however you like.
Good. Perfect.
So, yeah.
Second question. The reason you started a hat company, of all things, you asked me sort of why I started what I started. Why would you start a hat company?
I like hats, number one. I really have a passion for and enjoy hats. Number two, I know how wearing a nice hat that fits me well makes me feel. I think when you own a nice hat and you put your hat on, you're going to walk a little taller, you're going to stand a little taller, you're going to walk a little more proudly, you're going to feel a little bit better about yourself. And I know
I wish our society
makes me feel.
I wish our society, actually, and I've said this before to people other than you, I wish we as like a society were like back in the 30s and 40s, everybody wore a hat. I think that'd be a great thing, actually.
Because I think it's one of those things that just says an awful lot about you, the person.
Yeah, absolutely.
It speaks volumes.
Okay, two more questions. It's a lightning round, so I'm trying to be respectful of your time.
Fire
We're over
away.
an hour anyway. Once
You're
you
the
go
host.
over an hour in a podcast, it's like all bets are off, and
Bonus
there's really
time.
no sense in paying attention to time. So, what is the most hat friendly or hat unique town or city in the country?
Okay, so I think I have two answers to that.
Okay. They'll both be wrong because I think I know the answer, having been to a lot of different cities and seen and went
You
into a
are
lot of different
such a
hat
world
stores.
traveler. You are a world traveler.
Yeah, I'm a
So,
nation traveler for sure.
fun fact, and this is not my final answer, but fun fact, Danbury, Connecticut is widely known as the hat capital of the United States because it's where so many hat companies were located earlier in American history. That is where the expression "mad as a hatter"
Mhm.
was coined because so many of the factory workers had like the shakes and tremors from the mercury poisoning because they used to use mercury in the forming and the steaming of the hats. So one could say Danbury, Connecticut. I would actually say that what was the question? The hat capital of the U.S. and the most
No,
hat
just like
friendly.
the city that you could go to and find a lot of different hats and hat stores, and where hats would actually be something that people wore and bought, and like it was a thing.
So it's probably a thing, damn near anywhere in Texas. But I feel like you're going somewhere. You're setting me up with this, and then you're going to take me where
I have
you
an
want
opinion.
this to go.
I have an opinion. So
Where would that be?
my opinion is Charleston, South Carolina.
Why is that?
A lot of different hat stores, a lot of different hat wearers, very sort of people walking around. It's a little more. It's not an upscale town, but people treat it as an upscale town, and so they sort of dress up even if they're just walking around. It's a really cool town.
Yeah, in the South that fits. It's one of the last places in America where people still dress up to go to church on Sunday. Is the South. Yeah,
Yeah,
and put a
yeah,
nice. Yep. I was
yeah.
going to say maybe that town in Florida where Stetson University is located, because that is named after John B. Stetson, the
Yeah.
creator of what is now
The
known as
Stetson
the
hat.
cowboy
Yeah.
hat, and their
Yeah.
mascot is the Hatters.
Yeah. I guess that would be
But
possible.
yeah, Charleston, we'll go with that. Dan, is there anything you have going on that you want to promote? Where can people learn more about you?
No, but I feel like you need to do a complete job of introducing like what you do and what you're going to do. So can I give you 2 minutes? And you know what? I finished off a whole bottle of water because I've had this cold, and now I'm going to go pee like a racehorse. I'll be right back, and I want to hear the.
Wow.
So you promote yourself
Okay.
while I go to the bathroom.
I First of all, folks, I'll tell you, none of this was scripted. This is just what you get when you get Dan and I together, even on a Zoom call. So I will use this opportunity while he pees like a racehorse, to quote the great Dan Tudor, to share a little bit about what I'm doing here with Hats by Bru. The website is hatsbybru.com if you didn't already know that. The podcast it's about hats and the people who wear them, and just the personal and professional hats that we all wear, but also the actual hats that we like and enjoy. And the podcast is meant to be lighthearted and fun, but also, there'll be some cerebral questions like I asked Dan. And I'm very pro hat. I love hats. I think that a great hat makes you feel great. And it's important that we all feel great. Our mental health is important. And I do think a great hat makes you feel better. So you can take a look at a
That's
lot
not
of.
the only thing that makes you feel better, John.
I believe you. You look like you lost 10 pounds. But
Happy
I'd
and
encourage
relaxed.
you to head over to hatsbybrew.com. Take a look at all the different types of hats that we have. If you're local, you can just bring your hat in to get cleaned. I just cleaned a gentleman's cowboy hat. He's actually a rancher in Maine, which is a rare thing. And he just brought his hat in for a cleaning the other day and ended up buying a new hat. But we've got all kinds of hats, and it can be like a custom piece of artwork that's wearable art, really. We can customize the brand, the brim, the hat band, the brim. We can brand your name into the hat. We can do all sorts of fun stuff. The sky's the limit. And that's probably longer than 2 minutes, but Dan is back, and I'm sure he has a very specific way that he wants to wrap this up. So I'll hand the mic back to you, since you are now, you're asking the questions and hosting the show.
Okay, well, I'll ask two more questions. What has been the most difficult part of launching this venture and becoming a hatter?
And number one, as you had mentioned, like back in the 20s and 30s, everyone wore a hat. Most people don't wear hats today.
Right.
They'll wear a ball cap. They won't wear a formal hat necessarily. So it's really finding the right people, finding fellow hat lovers. And, whether it's via social media or me simply wearing my hat to the grocery store as a walking billboard, that's kind of the challenge. And especially up here in Maine, which if you're wearing a hat, a lot of the time you're wearing a winter hat.
Mm. I saw something that you posted. I liked the hat, the cowboy hat, but just cut like the baseball brim in the front. That was very
Good look.
unique.
That'd be a good look for you.
That'd be a horrible look for me, but somebody with a differently shaped head could pull it off. Very unique. It's kind of a cross cultural, like it's harkens to the past, but very much to the present. It's like the mullet of hats.
The El Camino of hats, yes.
Yeah, the El Camino.
Maybe I'll make you one with the Houston Astros logo.
Wow, that would be you you may have stumbled onto a great licensing opportunity for the Rangers and the Astros, my friend. We gotta you talk about that. So the last thing is, what scares you the most about this new venture and doing something that is not a cultural trend? It's not on the Today Show. It's you're like the Pied Piper of the hat community, going out and saying you should wear a hat.
What scares me the most is simply I'm the previous world I'm coming from, and I still do a little bit of, is speaking, coaching. Like, there's no inventory. I'm the inventory. I'll go hop on a plane, go speak to a company, go speak at a conference or a convention, and maybe have some books shipped there, do a book signing, sell some books. This is an inventory intensive business, and hats are not inexpensive. So there's been an outlay of capital for inventory and the corresponding pressure to sell said inventory. It's kind of uncharted waters for me in the last 15 years, at least, so yeah, that it's going to take a little getting used to, I think.
Yeah, good. Well, if anyone can do it, you can do it. I know that.
Appreciate that. Thanks for coming on the show, Dan.
Tip of the hat to you, sir. I appreciate
it. My friend. Appreciate you. People you can learn more about Dan at dantudor.com. He runs Tudor Collegiate Strategies. If you work in higher education, whether it's athletics, admissions, in any kind of customer-facing manner, there's plenty you can learn from him and his team. So head on over to dantudor.com and check it all out. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Coach Bru.